Welcome to FCNYC. My name is Ben Chan and I do the Punch Zone for HBO. I'm here to talk to you about Floyd Mayweather versus Miguel Cotto on Cinco de Mayo. It's on pay-per-view and this is a fight that a lot of people are looking forward to. But let's start with the top of the pay-per-view card. It's going to start off with DeAndre Latimore versus Carlos Quintana. Two guys that are kind of both really needing a win. They're guys that aren't that popular. They're not really television friendly fighters, I don't think. Let's start with DeAndre Latimore. He was thought to be a prospect when he defeated Sakun Powell, but then he went on to lose his next fight to Corey Spinks and the title, so that kind of put his career in kind of a limbo. He's been fighting guys that are not so good since then with mixed results. And he's won his last few fights, but he looks very vulnerable. He's not a guy that has knockout power, but he is a stern puncher. We'll see what he can do against Carlos Quintana. Now, Quintana is a guy who, at his best, has looked better than Latimore. Some names on Quintana's resume include Joel Julio, who he beat in an upset. He also was the one who handed Paul Williams his first defeat. But Paul Williams came back in the rematch and knocked him out in the first round. In between Joel Julio and Paul Williams, Quintana got a shot at fellow Puerto Rican fighter Miguel Cotto, who will be fighting in the main event on May 5th. And Cotto beat the crap out of Carlos Quintana. So where does that put these guys? I don't know. Quintana's 35. He hasn't been really that active in the last year or so. But at his best, he's a better fighter than Latimore. Latimore is a younger fighter. We'll see whether Quintana has enough skill left to beat the younger fighter. Next up, we were supposed to get Jesse Vargas versus Alfonso Gomez. Gomez is pulled out of the fight because of back spasms, I believe. And in his stead, Steve Forbes will be fighting. Now, let's start with Vargas. Vargas is an interesting fighter. He's a young guy. He's kind of, I wouldn't say he's a grade A blue chip prospect like Canelo Alvarez, who's featured later on, but he's a solid prospect. He's a guy that might make waves in the division. He's also a guy that's fought on television a few times and that makes good fights. He's not a particularly strong puncher. He's not a knockout puncher, but he's a stern puncher. And he is fighting a guy in Steve Forbes that has retired from boxing and come back. And usually guys that retire from boxing and come back don't do so well. Forbes is a guy who was at his best at lower weights. Now this fight is being fought at welterweight, but at a catchweight of 150, and that signifies where Steve Forbes is at in terms of making weight. Steve Forbes isn't at his best when he's fighting at 150. He doesn't look like the kind of guy that used to be able to outbox guys or outwork guys at the lower weights. Versus Vargas, I'm not sure how much he brings to the table. He might look like he's in great shape, but again, he's an older fighter, so I don't know how much Forbes really has left in him. I know that Vargas has looked pretty good. He's not invulnerable, but I don't think Forbes has the tools at this age to take advantage of those vulnerabilities that Vargas has. And then we have, I think this is the co-main event on the card. We have Canelo Alvarez versus Shane Mosley. Now, this is a fight that I'm not particularly interested in watching, but apparently a lot of people are, especially Mexicans who love Canelo Alvarez. He's arguably the most prominent boxer in Mexico right now, maybe after Juan Marquez. Maybe they're equal, or maybe he's a little bit after, but he is really, really big in Mexico, and for good reason. He's a young guy, he's a good fighter. I think the hype machine may be a little bit overblown. I think he still has some holes in his games, but as do most fighters. But he's a guy, he's got a really good professional record. Some of the names on his resume include Kermit Cintron, Alfonso Gomez, Ryan Rhodes. So he's beat some guys. He's 39-0 with one draw, also into the mix. He's got 40 fights, which is really good for a guy his age. He's got a lot of experience. And he's fighting in Shane Mosley, a guy who has a name, a guy who used to be a legend. Now, the last time Shane Mosley looked really good was when he beat the crap out of Antonio Margarito. He beat him down that line. That was Mosley's moment. After that, he had a fight that he didn't look just a stinker versus Sergio Mora. And then he went on to fight Floyd Mayweather Jr., who's fighting in the main event, and he had one good round where he shook Mayweather. Mayweather came back and won the rest of that fight. And then he looked like he didn't have anything left versus Pacquiao. Pacquiao didn't knock him out, but it seemed like it was more that Pacquiao didn't push for the knockout than Shane Mosley was doing anything to keep Pacquiao off of him. Now, I expect Canelo Alvarez to win this fight handedly. He'll probably get a decision. Nobody has really knocked out Shane Mosley after Vernon Forrest, so Mosley's kind of a sturdy fighter, but maybe Canelo Alvarez will push for the knockout just because he's a young guy. He's looking for another notch to add to his belt. My partner in crime, who couldn't be here tonight, Aris Pina, actually says Mosley is going to win this fight because Canelo Alvarez is a sucker for a right hand. Now, granted, that might be the case for Alvarez. Like I said, he's got holes in his game, but I don't think Mosley's going to hit him with enough right hands to knock him out. When's the last time Mosley knocked anybody out except for Margarito, who was tailor-made for him? Who knows? Maybe. But if Mosley can take out Canelo Alvarez, maybe Mosley takes over the hat of the executioner after beating Margarito. I don't know. But let's get to the main event. We've got Miguel Cotto versus Floyd Mayweather Jr. Okay, so a lot of people are making size an issue here. A lot of people who are pulling for Cotto say that size is going to be the issue. Cotto's been fighting at junior middleweight for longer than Floyd Mayweather, and Cotto has beat some guys at junior middleweight. Now I ask you, who has Miguel Cotto beat at junior middleweight? Let's look at the list. He beat Yuri Foreman, a fighter who hurt his leg and never fought again afterward. It was a great fight at it was a great atmosphere at Yankee Stadium, but it wasn't a great fight, okay? And that fight was notable because after Foreman hurt his leg, I think his corner threw in the towel, and the referee said, "No, we're just going to continue fighting." So, and Cotto eventually got the TKO. Who else has Cotto beat at junior middleweight? Ricardo Mayorga, who came out of retirement to fight Miguel Cotto. Now, make no mistake, this is not the same Ricardo Mayorga who beat down Vernon Forrest. This was Ricardo Mayorga who had to cut weight, who looked pretty bad, who needed the money, who came out to fight Miguel Cotto. Ricardo Mayorga will always be one of the greatest trash talkers in boxing in terms of what he brings into the ring. Not a lot. So Cotto beat Yuri Foreman, Ricardo Mayorga, and then he beat Antonio Margarito, the one-eyed fighter. I was at the fight at Madison Square Garden on December 3rd. Did Cotto look good? Yeah, he looked awesome, but he was fighting a guy who has one eye. I'm sorry. I think that Mayweather probably would have looked great against Margarito. I think anybody would have looked pretty good against Margarito. You know he has the eye issue. You know what to aim at. You know what's going to happen. So, so let's wrap this up. Foreman, Mayorga, Margarito. This is not a really good resume for junior middleweight. Now, all credit to Cotto. I know he's going to come into the fight in shape. He always gives an honest effort. Maybe he brings in some new wrinkles because of the training he's been doing with the new trainer. But I don't think Cotto has the skill to beat Mayweather. Now, Mayweather has fought at junior middleweight. And who did he beat? Oscar De La Hoya. Arguably the last time that Oscar De La Hoya actually looked decent in the ring. And if you remember that fight, De La Hoya was doing okay. He actually put a few rounds in the bank and was with that jab of his, but for some reason decided to holster his jab, and Mayweather took over that fight. Now, I would take Mayweather's victory over De La Hoya versus Cotto's victories over Foreman, Mayorga, and Margarito any day. It's not that I dislike Cotto. I love him as a fighter. I've been to Madison Square Garden several times to see him. I love when he fights the night before the Puerto Rican Day Parade. I just don't think that he has the skill to beat Floyd Mayweather. And if he does beat Floyd Mayweather, I'll give him all the praise he deserves, but I think that would be more of a signal of where Mayweather is in terms of his physical shape than where Cotto is. Because I think Cotto is a good fighter. I think he's going to give it his all, but I think in the end, it's going to be Mayweather's skill that takes over this fight. Now, if Mayweather does win, like I expect him to, this will be his 43rd victory, okay? But I don't want to hear Mayweather say 43 have tried and 43 have failed. Because now, throughout this promotion, I've had to listen to Mayweather say 42 have tried and 42 have failed. Yes, Mayweather has won 42 fights up to this point. But one of those fights was a rematch. So technically, 41 have tried and 41 have failed because he rematched with Jose Luis Castillo. If anybody connected to Mayweather is watching this, please, it's 41 have tried and 41 have failed. And after Cotto, it'll be 42 have tried and 42 have failed. 43 fights doesn't mean you necessarily fought 43 people, okay? Thank you for watching Fight City NYC. I'm looking forward to counting the punches, and I'm looking forward to you watching the fight on Cinco de Mayo on HBO. Thanks.